This is it, folks. This is when you collect all the Jimmies and Joes right here at the Voice of College Football, Florida State Live. Get those comments and questions. They're working in the live chat, and we will get to them. We got Logan Robinson here from Knoll Game Day. So when you get done here, of course, check out Logan and everybody else at Knoll Game Day for the latest on a National Signing Day, and, of course, the transfer portal working as well. Logan, what's going on today? You got to be hustling.
Yeah, it's been a busy one, Mark. It's been ridiculous. Definitely a lot earlier than I usually get up, but it was good. You just kind of have that. It's like before Christmas kind of feel for, I guess, older people, or at least people that love college football, and know a lot of people stick to recruiting coverage. Getting that, going to bed and waking up early, just get out of bed quickly, and it was a fun morning day overall. Florida State even had a practice today, which was such a weird feeling. I know a lot of the FSU beat stayed at home while being able to cover early signing day. I went to practice. Our guy Dustin took care of all the articles going out, and I did the posting from practice. But just an overall very, very busy day. I just wrapped up our press conference with Mike Norvell and all of the assistants too, and jump back on to jump on here with you, Mark. So a really, really busy day. Just depends on which FSU fan you talk to, if you came away from it positively or negatively. Personally, I think Florida State had a good day. It could have been definitely better. We'll talk about a guy or two, but not too shabby of a Tribe 23, at least for early signing day. It's only early signing day at this moment.
Well, let's start with the positive spin. So what do you take away that you like from some of the way the things broke today?
I think the biggest one is you're going to start off with Hakeem Williams. And I don't think there was any thought process from people. You would see social media and people flipping out. Oh my God, could he go to Miami? There's just a lot of PTSD from what happened with Travis Hunter last year. And that's understandable for sure. But Hakeem Williams had the whole ceremony set up, had an FSU jersey while he was going on to stage and doing his announcement there, and had FSU balloons. He did it at his former middle school, which was cool, and had a lot of family there, friends. Getting Hakeem Williams in the fold, this is a freakish athlete. Just the size that he brings already, like it says here on 247 Sports, 6'3", 200. Mike Norvell talked about him today during the press conference, saying, that this guy has a chance to be elite. He's already got the size there. He's had it for a couple of years now, but now Florida State gets to develop him, and Ron Dugans gets to put his hands on him and be able to do a lot of things with this guy and Mike Norvell's offense. Explosive player. And really, I think the character is probably the biggest thing. That's something Mike Norvell and the rest of the staff have talked about, along with Ron Dugans. I talked with Ron Dugans during the press conference, and, he was just saying the biggest thing coming away from this recruitment is just loyalty. And, there was a lot of high schools that wanted to take him away from Shanahan down there in Miami. He ends up just sticking with Shanahan. And then you go over and he commits to Florida State. And then the initial response from FSU fans going into it and right afterwards, well, he's probably going to go visit elsewhere, go test the waters with a few other colleges. He could be committing to another school. That's kind of the feeling that a lot of people had of Hakeem Williams early on. But after a couple of weeks, after a month or so, it really started to become apparent that this kid right here, this young man, was going to stick with FSU and Ron Dugans no matter what. And there was a lot of schools. Hakeem talked about it today after his ceremony, saying that his phone was getting blown the heck up the last 48 hours. And it makes sense for sure. Mario Cristobal trying to get in contact too. But Hakeem Williams said the biggest thing with him is loyalty. And he was going to stick to his word, and he sure enough did. And Florida State's able to keep a hold of their top-ranked recruit in the 2023 class.
Logan, I know these guys are getting bigger and bigger every year, but still, you don't see a whole lot of high school wide receivers coming out at 200 pounds. Like, already that heavy, and I know that he's going to fill out a little bit more. I don't know this for sure, but I got to think that, with a college level weight program and everything else, that there's maybe a little bit more to grow there. But he's a Big dude.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Got to see him a few times up close. I don't think he's at 200. I think he's probably closer to 215. It might be an
Mm,
outdated
yeah.
metric there on him. That's how big
Mm.
he is. Big, strong base, strong body. You see it on film too, but whenever you're up close and you get to see him, he's 6'3", and if that says 200, there's some extra stuff going on there because he's definitely either put on some more size, and like you said, once he gets to the collegiate level, he's going to go with Coach Storms, Florida State strength and conditioning coach, and they're going to work on him quite a bit. But it's kind of like a thing with Julian Armella, who's a different position at the offensive tackle now, a true freshman that came into Florida State in phenomenal shape. And Julian Armella was not an early enrollee at this time. Hakeem Williams he'll be here only in just a few weeks. I think Coach Storms, along with the rest of the trainers there and strength and conditioning coaches, are salivating on what they can do with Hakeem Williams, and just Mike Norvell alone with what they can do offensively. Coach Tokar is talking about it today during the press conference of just the impact that Hakeem Williams can bring to this offense is going to be fun to work with.
Yeah, so there's the 5-star there, Hakeem Williams, 6 players ranked in the top 300, 247 Sports. And again, it's a class of 16 right now with of course, the transfer is a whole other deal, but they count against the roster spots. So, you're still looking at most likely a few more spots here in the next before February.
Yep. Yeah, you definitely got some more there along with the transfers too. We got a note on Edwin Joseph also. That was a defensive back commit for Florida State that went down today. There was some ups and downs throughout the last couple of weeks of the recruitment. It's swaying in Florida State side. Is it going Louisville side? I think in the last 24 hours, things started flipping over on Florida State's. He makes things official there. He's been a guy that's been recruiting heavily now and has a close relationship with Conrad Hussey, which is a guy that was supposed to make an announcement here in about an hour or so. Current Penn State safety commit, recently visited Florida State, top 10, just depending on which other recruiting outlets you look at, top 10 safety across the country. Florida State really needs to add depth in that safety room. They need to add some pieces that they can develop and work on, just kind of how they are doing right now with Shaheem Brown. I personally, looking at his tape, I really like this kid. I think he's got smarts to be at the right position at the right times. 6 foot, 190. Supposed to make the commitment tonight. It hasn't been shared specifically from Conrad. He hasn't made an announcement or anything that he does not intend on signing, because this morning he did put out a post along with another group that he would be having a signing tonight, along with some other players. Keeping an eye on this, things can always happen. This is just kind of how it goes. Definitely, if you're a Florida State fan, it just doesn't feel like early signing day is over until we're past midnight at this point. You look at Julian Armella last year, that was a thing where we were hearing, okay, Florida State's in this, then it goes away, and then, okay, Florida State leaning there, and then out of nowhere, Julian Armella says, I've got an announcement, and then I've got an announcement at this time, and then I've got an announcement at this time, keeps on pushing it back. Florida State fans are kind of used to this. Not saying this is what's going to be happening with Conrad Hussey, but I think Florida State has put themselves in a really good spot here relationships-wise, and Penn State is trying as hard as they can to hold on to Hussey. I think it's more now Penn State holding on rather than maybe Miami being in the mix here. Miami's doing a lot of things as much as they can to salvage some of the stuff that's been going on with them throughout early signing day. But, Conrad Hussey would be a major get for Florida State, and that would probably make a few FSU fans that are still not so happy about that Keldrick Falk decommitment, which we'll talk about in a minute, make them feel a little bit better before they go to bed tonight. So we'll keep an eye on this with Conrad Hussey if anything changes. Like I said, he hasn't officially said anything on his Instagram, Twitter, hasn't contacted or given us any update on what the game plan is if he does decide to sign tonight. So keeping a close eye on this one. I've got the alerts on and everything on the social media, so we'll see if anything happens.
Yeah, good get for sure. 11th rated safety in the country. So roughly a top 150 player there, according to the 247 ranking. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. You brought it up, so we might as well go there with Keldrick Falk out of Alabama making the flip to Auburn.
Yeah, we talked about, I think, James on here, James Coleman, and I had discussed it last week, and Auburn started making a really decent push, and it wasn't just last week. It's been for months now that Keldrick Falk has been in contact with Auburn, and they've made a push. And Hugh Freeze, you get the whole new coaching staff, you get the new head coaching hire, and you get that buzz going. And Auburn right now has a lot of NIL opportunities that they're able to give to these recruits and transfers coming in. And you've seen that this early signing day with grabbing some of the targets and having some flips head their way. Florida State on the bad end of this one this afternoon. It was a weird situation being at practice. This flip happened right after practice. Coach JP, Florida State's defensive ends coach, seeing him on the phone around the time that was going on. Just such a weird situation, and what kind of timeline Florida State had the practice going on. But yeah, he ends up picking Auburn. And Florida State, looking at the defensive end room, yeah, you've got experience in there. You've got some young guys, though, that still are working to be developed. You see signs from Byron Turner. You already know kind of what you're going to get and what you're going to get out of Pat Payne, Derek McClendon. Jared Verse still up in the air on what he wants to do. Does he end up staying? Does he enter the NFL draft? I talked with Derek McClendon after practice today, and he told me, he's specifically, I'm trying to recruit him to come back for another season, but I also understand this is a big time business decision for him. And I think there's optimism for a Jared Verse return, but you would love to have a Keldrick Falk in the rotation, a former FSU commit that you could develop throughout the next couple of years rather than having to rely on the transfer portal, which it seems like is kind of a theme right now for Mike Norvell, and they're doing a great job of doing so. And not like you're bringing in some transfers at 1 year and dip out. You're having some guys that will be here for a couple of years, like a Johnny Wilson, a Micah Pittman, but you want to not have to rely on that portal so much, because at some points, some of the guys that you're going after aren't always going to be available for you at that position. And, Florida State was able to do that and find targets that they wanted in the wide receiver room last year. But is that always going to be the case moving forward? It's up in the air right now. And so Keldrick Falk would have changed a lot of that for Florida State in the defensive end room. I'm still, it hasn't changed ever, but Lamont Green Jr., Boots is his nickname, legacy commit for Florida State. Extremely excited for him. Coach Norvell talked about him today after the press conference, just saying, just elite get off. And that first foot off the grass is ridiculous. And seeing that in person, I completely agree with him. Just a guy that worked his tail off and earned that scholarship from Florida State. And his dad, there was no reason to believe that he was going to go anywhere else. That's a dad that, you're going to be a Knoll and you're not going to be anything else. But, more of looking at Lamont Green Jr. and what he did with his body, the way that he's played, how many sacks he put on the season. There's a lot to like, but you would have liked to add that alongside Keldrick Falk and be able to develop these guys for the next couple of years.
Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. We do this every Wednesday at 6 Eastern Time. And Logan, got to say, because I may forget to say it at the end, appreciate you with everything that's going on. And you're hustling all over the place. We're out of practice today, National Signing Day, everything going on, transfer portal humming, that you made time to be here. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate you always having me, Mark.
Logan, I posted a couple videos. They don't compare, folks, to what you get at Knoll Game Day. So get on over to Knoll Game Day. But I looked at a few things here. And, of course, I saw these transfers come through with Keandre Jones and Jeremiah Byers. And, the offensive line that has been so criticized, and rightfully so, for a long time, was certainly so much better this year. And they are obviously wanting that not to slip back to where it was.
No, they're continuing to load up on that offensive line, bringing in these transfers like Byers. That's an immediate player. I mean, that's an immediate impact type of player that's going to come in and play right away. That's kind of what Florida State has done the last couple of years. You look at Dylan Gibbons, you look at Dimitri Emmanuel too, Jason Turnentine, who wasn't a starter at the beginning of this season, ended up starting a lot of games because of Bless Harris, your tackle that went down before the season started. After that first game, Florida State building depth. And now I'll be honest with you, this is the best offensive line transfer class that they've had. And that's saying something with what Coach Atkins has been able to do. Coach Atkins, see how much longer Florida State's going to be able to keep him. But to see not only you'll be able to bring in this talent, but also develop them. And you're seeing like a Dimitri Emmanuel get better. You're seeing Jason Turnentine, which, Coach Atkins told us about early on in the season, had to see development, had to see consistency, because you'd see signs of better play. But then whenever things go bad, it goes bad. The consistency of playing better had to be there. So Florida State and what Coach Atkins has been able to do on that O-line is extremely impressive. But there's some guys coming in that are going to bring in an immediate impact and also depth there on the offensive line. And I need to mention too, some sleeper guys that Florida State, FSU fans might be looking over and such. But Lucas Simmons is a gigantic get for Florida State. That was their number one offensive tackle target, per Mike Norvell just a couple of hours ago, telling us that was their number one guy on top of the board, and they ended up landing him, an international recruit here. A lot of schools after him. You just see the ability that he has, the size, 6'8", 300, just the athleticism too. If you look at his tape, a true tackle body type that Florida State and Coach Atkins can do a lot of work with. And, that's something Florida State fans should be ecstatic about. And they were, but things get overlooked, and you get in the early sign day and you're looking at the ones that haven't been committed or whatever. There's some commits in here that have been here for a while now that ended up still signing with Florida State, and Florida State did a good job of holding on to them. Just missed out on Kedrick Falk today, but the rest of these guys, you look at Keith Sampson too, who kind of initially going into early signing day not too long ago was thinking about holding things off all the way going into national signing day in February. A guy where a lot of schools around his area in North Carolina, including NC State, were heavily after, and he ends up sticking with Odell Higgins and Florida State and putting things away and signing and sending in his NLI this morning. So, and then real quick, Jacobs, I'm going to completely screw this name up. Hopefully I don't, but Vendravius, I think that was perfect, actually. Vendravius Jacobs, I got to see him in camp. Mark, that's a special guy that you're going to be able to line up next to Hakeem Williams in the future. I think talent-wise, higher ceiling than Ontario Wilson, and Ontario Wilson has been a big-time threat against some defenses that Florida State has gone after this season. But this is a special player. Doesn't get a lot of recognition on the recruiting sites as much, and some of that has to go with COVID year, things going on, camp stuff, yada, yada, yada. But, Florida State was able to hold on to Jacobs, and just hearing from the staff, they really love this kid's character, and does great interviews. And I think Florida State that might be a sleeper guy that people aren't talking about enough for whoever's quarterback, Brock Glenn, which we can talk about. But this wide receiver room is absolutely loaded for Ron Dugans moving forward.
Vendravius Jacobs last season caught 100 passes for over 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns. That's his line on the season. So, and I know high school stats can sometimes mean a lot, and sometimes they don't mean too much, but he's put in the reps. That's for sure. He's definitely been productive. That's crazy.
Yep, the stats are there. I think one of the top leading, if not top leading guy, stats wise in Florida. Ridiculous talent, and like I said, sleeper guy. Not a lot of people talking about him as much, and that's understandable. You've got 5-star Hakeem Williams, and everybody's glued to him. But Jacobs is going to be one of those guys that you're like, okay, hello. Well, whenever you see him out on the field, just the way that he runs his routes, crisp route runner, and then also loves going up for the ball. And not the biggest size, 6 foot 167. They're going to put on a little bit of size to him, but he doesn't need to add on a whole ton. I'd like to keep him in that type of body shape that he's in, just because of how smooth he is as a route runner. It's hard for DBs to catch up and go hip to hip with him. So watching him in camp was him and Camden Fryer, who's a 2024 commit, also legacy commit. Probably some of my 2 favorite wide receivers. Haven't been able to see Hakeem Williams in person compete, but just going off of Jacobs and Camden Fryer, those guys just stay glued into my head whenever I think about them. It's just the way that they put on against a lot of really good competition at Florida State's elite camp over the summer was phenomenal. It was really special. So Jacobs, a steal for Ron Dugans, in my opinion, for this class.
So I guess we might as well just keep going down the list, and you don't have to hit on everyone. You certainly can, but whomever comes to mind as we make our way down the list.
Yeah, I'll go to Brock Glenn right here. Got to sit down and talk with Coach Tokarz, Florida State's quarterbacks coach, a little while ago, and this was a former Ohio State commit. Florida State lost a commitment from Chris Parson, and they had a few quarterbacks come visit, and one of those was indeed Brock Glenn. Comes and visits, and Florida State, feels pretty optimistic that it's going to land in their favor, but ends up picking Ohio State. Ohio State has a lot of quarterbacks in their class. And then throughout the season, I think you saw the turn and the upwards directions that Jordan Travis was having. And that's exactly what Tokarz mentioned to me earlier, was just saying, hey, I think Brock saw the development and the improvement that Jordan Travis had on this season. And, being one of the most explosive players in college football, but also to see his passing be so much better, crisp, reading better, taking care of the ball better, just a development there. I think that really attracted Brock Glenn, and that all added up into more wins too for FSU. And you end up becoming state champs for very long. It's been quite a while since Florida State's been able to say that. You're going to a bowl game, a really nice bowl game too. And I think all things just added up for where Brock Glenn kind of turned his mind and started focusing on Florida State and what Mike Norvell and Tokarz were doing. And it wasn't much of a shock here because they had done a really good job on the relationship side of things. Here he is. And, that's a big pickup for that quarterback room. They need it, and I think it's more, for me, in my opinion, a good push for A.J. Duffy, who's a true freshman right now, that I think will spur up some good competition, because you've already got Jordan Travis. That's your solidified starter in 2023. You don't have to stress on Brock Glenn to do so much, but you would like to see A.J. Duffy kind of have a guy in his heels a little bit to push him, in my opinion. So I think this is great to have. You also have Tate Rodemaker, unless he decides to make a decision on staying or going with the program. We'll see what ends up happening there. But, I just personally think Glenn and Duffy, those 2 guys going at it, it's going to be good for both of them.
Okay. Looking at a class again with 16 signed, and who else are we looking at here?
I like Jaden Jones here. Jaden Jones, JUCO defensive end. That's where Florida State and Coach Papuchis are going to put him. Dealing rehabbing from, I believe it was just ACL. I don't think it was MCL or anything. Definitely a significant knee injury, but recovering very well from what we've been told. 6'6", 240, looks the part. They're going to put some more size on him too, but just looking at some of his tape and then seeing him in person, it really, I don't know how you say it. The staff they just kind of like perk up whenever, talk about Jaden Jones. There's just something there that they see, and I believe in them. Coach Papuchis and what they've been able to do in that defensive end room has been remarkable, and developing guys. And Jaden Jones is going to be one, I think, that later down the line we'll look back at and say, yeah, this was a really nice pickup, an evaluation from Florida State staff, because this is a talented player, and he's got experience, but to come in and get developed is going to be the big thing. And Florida State's been able to do that. You look at Pat Payton, and now you're looking at Byron Turner too. Some guys that are making some strides, getting more playing time and making more impact in practices that relates or then unloads into games on Saturdays. So Jaden Jones is a name that I think is be huge, as long as recovery goes well. Definitely once he arrives at Florida State, they do a very good job on that part. But nice pickup there, nice signing for Florida State.
This is your destination, everyone, for Florida State football talk every Wednesday at 6 Eastern time. And then you catch Logan and the rest of the guys on Knoll Game Day. Is it at 8 or 8:30 tonight?
It'll be at 8 tonight. Yep.
8 o'clock tonight, Knoll Game Day right here on YouTube. So get on over there. But every Wednesday right here, 6 Eastern. Bring some friends with you next week. Why don't we do that? And hit the like button while you're at it. Logan, you notice when we don't have Jason around, I relieve you of all duties of the whole like button speech halfway through. We can just, remind people every so often, hit the like button, help us out. It's all good.
Please smash it. Smash it. Maybe there will be a surprise commit tonight. Who knows?
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
There you go. Couple people in the chat a little bit concerned about too much focus on the transfer portal and not enough on the straight recruiting out of high school. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, kind of touched on it earlier. Florida State, you don't want to have to rely on the transfer portal. You don't want to have to say, hey, all right, we can fix this as long as we can wait on a few names to pop up in the portal. That's just not how it's going to work. You still got to stay strictly to your basics and your day one of, hey, we got to go out and recruit and land these guys and definitely close. And I think that's a big thing for FSU fans today is, hey, we had a really talented defensive end where it's not a major concerning need, but it's definitely a position that you need to have depth on right now. And you've got Lamont Green Jr. coming in, you've got Jaden Jones, but Kedrick Falk was your second highest rated recruit in this class, and you could not close on him. And you allowed Auburn to come in and flip him. You got a new staff, and you've had Kedrick Falk committed for a good long while now. And I think the immediate thing now is for Florida State fans to look at the transfer portal, and that just can't always be the case. And you know what? That might end up happening. They might end up looking at the transfer portal and seeing if there's something there, but I think too, a lot of it's going to come down on what they're hearing from Jared Verse, and that's already happened in house, and we'll see how they evaluate it going forward. But you can't rely on the transfer portal that much continuously year by year like that.
Big games here. Look at this. Love it.
What's going on, man? Got a new Christmas setups here, man. I got a desktop a desktop in the house, and I got a monitor, camera, microphone. I feel like Logan right now, man. It's getting that no game day check.
No. Hey, you got that HD
Santa
now.
Claus hooked me up.
Nice.
You got that HD.
Looking good. Yeah. I know nobody's going to compete with Logan. He's got, although Logan, I'm going to spring a surprise on you next week. That's all I'm going to say. Might have something to match you.
You got the new look coming?
We're kind of building it out piece by piece, but I'm kind of in a little holding stage right now, so we'll see.
Okay.
But,
I like it.
Well, James, we've been sizing up the pluses and minuses. So, what's your overall take before we get down to the details?
I mean, one of the things that I've always stressed is having a great season this year, and then really looking ahead to what 2023 season is going to look like. Mike Norvell's greatest recruiting was going to be in convincing a lot of the players to stay. And that's really where it came down to. And they did a great job with that. So that was the main thing. And then they added key pieces through high school recruiting, and they just got better in the transfer portal. So it wasn't. Is it acceptable? No. I actually thought we would have a top 15 class. We had that until Falk decommitted. I think they need to really go figure out to the drawing board, why are we losing recruits, our top-rated recruit for the third straight year in the final minutes before, like, so you lost what was the quarterback? You lost Altmaier. That wasn't quite in the final minutes, but it was, you had him committed for a while. Obviously, Travis Hunter last year, Falk this year. You got to figure out what's going on with that. But at the end of the day, guys like, I think Lamont Green Jr. has been extremely disrespected by fans of the like we grew up with Boot. I think we grew up watching him. We watched him grow up through social media, so we forget like what his roots are, and that's Lamont Green Jr. But I look at KJ Sampson. I look at the linebacker. You got Blake Nicholson. You got, did we get the kid from UVA? Did he commit?
He just did, and it's to Virginia. He's going to Virginia.
So missing on that kind of hurts, but you're still good in the recruiting in the linebacker room. It just puts more pressure on 2024. And what I think Florida State does do a good job of is relying on the resources in which it does have. One of the things in Georgia, I've stressed this, in the Southeast, but in particular Florida and Georgia, you have alumni who are in every major hotbed, who are willing to do whatever you want us to do. You got to equip us. Like in Jacksonville right now. So you have Sharif Denson, who ended up going to Florida. You have Jordan Hall, who's might end up at Florida. We had our left tackle, another offensive tackle flip Kearney. I think it was a Kearney, right? Roger. Anyways, the offense, he's flipped to Florida. You've got tons of talent here at Jacksonville. Why not just say, James, hey man, what do you think about this kid? Do you know any relationship? What do you know about this kid? See, when I look at the Falk situation, it reminds me of Mims. And what a lot of people look at as Mims is we pick on War Chant. And yes, War Chant probably dropped the ball and announced it too early. But that mom is extremely religious. And they tied it in very Southern, and they tied it into a sign from God and whatever. I'm not here to argue that. I just know that's what the people think. And once I heard Falk's mom, people saying that that's what made her feel good about Freeze, man, we should have had Mike with some Bible, armed him with some Bible scriptures or something to go in there and make that mama feel good. One thing Bobby used to always say is, ma'am, your son going to go to church 2 times a year with me. We're going to send him to a black church and we're going to go to a white church. But I'm going to make sure your baby go to church. It's just stuff like I say that facetiously, but like you have to find what these people care about, and you have to always pull at those things. And that it's recruiters recruit. You're always recruiting. It's like a relationship. If you know your wife likes certain things, you got to keep doing those certain things, because what happens is the Hugh Freezes of the world, or that hometown guy that got a little in, is going to come there and they're going to figure out what she likes. And the next thing you know, you lost your bad chick. So, but all in all, it's not bad. I just think you can't have, I'm not going to sit here next year and say, oh, we have another subpar recruiting class in the top 30s, and that's okay, no matter what we do in the transfer portal.
So you just hit an angle that I don't think about, that, I look at these recruiting staffs and these coaching staffs and think, how in the world did they recruit all these kids and look at all this tape and build relationships and text constantly when they're trying to run a 105-man roster and do all the things that they do with the current team? And you're talking about outsourcing a lot of this stuff and saying, let's use our resources here and all the people on the ground that love our football program and love our team and former players and all these people that can talk their language and know their area and know, what their family's into and all that you can take advantage of.
Man, that's people's grandmamas I know. Like, I remember, and I'm sure Logan can tell you the same thing too, but the amount of people there was a 5-star wide receiver from Texas in the 2024 class. Family reached out. We don't have an FSU offer. Said, oh, well, that's interesting. Don't know why you don't have that. They said we got offers from everybody. We've been watching. We like them. Why don't we have an offer? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can send a couple text messages and we can figure out why this happened. Well, the kid just so happened to be coming to Orlando for his little brother's Pop Warner National Championships. So obviously from Texas, you drive and it ain't but one way to get there. It's two places you got to drive through on your way down that way. You got to drive through Tallahassee and you got to drive past Hogtown to get to Orlando. It's I-10 to 75, very easy. Not a lot of ways to get lost there. Well, all they wanted was an opportunity to come and tour the campus. Things got lost in translation. It was last minute, but I'm just saying that's just little things on my part. And what I try to tell people is, now we are a prideful bunch. My job is to cover Florida State. My job is not to get recruited. I don't get paid $500,000 a year. It's all off of pride and to make sure I have an enjoyable time coming and doing your show, Mark. I really don't care. That's their job to get recruits. So I'm not going to beg you to allow me to help you. But at the same time, if you allow me to help you, I will be able to see this stuff. But if you don't need my help, you don't need my help. But you are going to be held to the standards. Like I tell people, I'm like my grandmama. My grandmama going to give you the shirt off her back. But if she told you something to do to avoid her having to take that shirt off her back, oh, you're going to hear every second of her taking that shirt off. You're going to hear her mouth. And I think that's just what it comes down to. They just got to get a little bit more creative. It's not about money. We have the money, but if we lack the money, we lack creativity. And I think that's where it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm wondering too. We talked about it earlier, James, but you lose Kedrick Falk, and I think now Florida State fans feel like, all right, we're going to go 0 for 2 because Conrad Hussey, the Penn State current commit right now, the top 11 safety in the country, seems like announcement's not coming tonight. He doesn't. We haven't seen an official post from him on Twitter or Instagram. He's kind of kept that same one that he had on earlier that he was going to announce with the rest of some teammates and other players around the area. That's one where Florida State, that's a need there at the safety position. Florida State, from what going into early sign day yesterday night, I think a lot of us felt pretty positive for FSU's side of things that they would land Hussey, and that'd be a big time addition there because that's someone that you can develop for the next couple of years. And it's been a big discussion so far on the show tonight, James, about developing guys, like developing your homegrown guys like a Pat Payne, a Shaheem Brown. You bring in a Conrad Hussey, that's another one of those guys that you're going to have around for a while instead of having to rely on the transfer portal every year by year. And that's going to be there. Obviously, we've seen that. We've seen that last couple of years. And next year will probably be even bigger. But relying on specific position groups always isn't going to be the case. And sometimes it's not going to be able to fill the talent that you're looking at. Luckily, you did great in the wide receiver room this last year, and it's worked out for you. Florida State did this heavily with the offensive line one, it seems like, and definitely in the tight end room. But every year that might not be there. But Conrad Hussey, I feel like, is one that would hurt. That would hurt definitely if you lost Kedrick Falk and you're not able to flip Hussey. That's a tough early signing day. Not that you already had talent that was committed, and I think we forget about the Lucas Simmons, we forget about the Lamont Green Jr., we forget about the Jacobs, and the Hakeem Williams somehow. But some of these though hurt quite a bit when you just can't bring in a few major needs, and that's adding to the defensive end room with Lamont Green Jr. and Jaden Jones, and then you really need a nice safety. You really do.
And I think the other side too is, just even with the wide receiver room. So there was talks about Andy Jean being able to flip from UF, but you have Micah Mays, who you literally had at the Florida game as well as a 4-star highly rated wide receiver who's going to Wake Forest. So that would have, again, your wide receiver, you got to go, when you're missing out, the positive is to figure out where you got Rich at. We got richer in the offensive line. We got richer in the wide receiver room. We got better in the quarterback room, obviously with Brock Glenn, that helped. I think Sam Singleton is a very underrated running back. Haven't seen him play personally. The kid is good. But, it would have been nice to have a Baxter that shouldn't have left Orlando to go to a 500 Texas team. Or are they below 500 now? Might be below 500. I don't even
Texas,
know. But
8-4 this year.
Okay, but either way, like just not to Texas standards. They lost lost a good running back, but at the same time, I'm like, yo, we should get guys like that. Hussey would be good. I think it's time to ask the question when you come in here. Who on this staff is just an A1 coach and who's an A1 recruiter? And why are they here? And is Woodson a top developer at the cornerback position? And I say cornerback because that's what on the paper he coaches. Safeties are coached by Fuller. But where was the weak spot at Florida State? A lot of people weren't as happy with our corner play. And we're not really filling that secondary, and you're supposed to be recruited. No Travis Hunter. We're not getting any other cats like that. Yes, we have some. Are you a good recruiter, or do guys just like you? What was it? What's the name of the movie, Mark? You wouldn't know this. I know Logan does, but Coffees for Closers. ABC always be closing.
Sure.
Glenn Ross. That they really Mike needs to go into the staff meeting and play the scene of Glenn Ross and say, this is how we go to recruiting. First place, I'm going to give you a nice BMW. Second place, you're going to get a set of steak knives. Third place and lower, you're fired. Like, that's just how it's becoming that way, because it's even at D tackle. And I love just me being critical of Odell. We just haven't had it's not just this year. It's been last 5 years. It's been very subpar. And what we brought in at D tackles. I think Ayo is going to be that guy. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that was getting Travis Johnson's, that was getting Darnell Dockett's, that was getting Broderick Bunkley's, that was getting Clifton Dixon's, who was at the time was really, really good. You were getting a guy from Lake City that played for the Eagles. Like, you were getting some cats, man. And like now we're in, KJ is going to be good, but like now we're in battles to like just who are we getting? So Mike has got to really go and start asking questions, but I do believe relationships matter. And, there's some layups in the 24-25 class that you got to start relying on, really pushing in on those relationships. Got a kid in Jacksonville I coach, Jamie French, 5-star wide receiver class of 2025. If Jamie doesn't go to Florida State, that's Florida State's fault. Jamie has a Florida State coach on his staff that drives him to games, former Florida State player. But if they're not talking to Jamie and they're not doing, I can't. You see what I'm saying? So like, there's coaches all over. Kyler Hall at Live Oak Swanee has plenty of guys. You've got Snoop Menace will talk to anybody in Miami for you. And they did it with Keem, which I thought was great. They learned their lesson. Travis Hunter, we let Dion come in. We didn't use our secret weapon, Peter Ward. They changed that. They used Peter so fast for Hakeem that it wasn't even fun. It ain't funny. That's kind of what that's what Florida's got to do, that if you don't have the strong recruiters. But I think getting a guy like Antonio Cromartie on staff some way, I'm not saying make him your cornerback coach, but I'm saying if you bring Crow back home, I think you automatically got another off-field guy. Or do what Florida does. Florida has 10 off-field staff, I believe, and Florida State has 4, 2 of which do it the old school way, which is like talk to high school coaches and just things like that. But they don't really like Bartow. Bartow is very connected with people that he knows, but do people know him now? It's a big difference between who you know and who knows you.
So when you look at what the other 2 schools in the state are doing, so there's a difference between them ranking wherever they rank and Florida State ranking wherever they rank, and there being not a whole lot of connection between those classes. But there's a difference between they rank where they rank and there was 5 or 10 players in each class that could have gone to Florida, could have gone to Miami, could have gone to Florida State. Were there a lot of misses that shouldn't have been misses that went in state?
I mean, you had Andy Jean here as wide receiver. This wasn't a major whiff, though. I mean, this was kind of late anyways in the recruitment. He sticks with Florida. You look at any wide receiver room now, you're gonna be just fine. You'll be just fine. That was just kind of an addition that you could add to the talent. Florida State's wide receiver room is going to be fine. Definitely, at least with the initial class that's coming in with Tribe 23, man. I don't know if you've been able to see him, James, but Vanjavius as Jacobs is
nice.
Nice talent. Very, very nice talent. Doesn't get talked about enough. Glad FSC was able to hold on to him. Really high character kid too, but the coaching staff couldn't stop talking about him today during the press conference. And you've already got Hakeem Williams too, but either you can call it a whiff or not. I don't think any FSU fan would though with Andy Jean. I think that was Jay. Let's come test the waters here. Let's see what's going on with the staff here at FSU. If there's anything there, yeah, maybe we'll definitely hear him out and stuff. But he ends up sticking with Billy Napier and wants to, you can get a field goal. What is that, field goal? I got the field goal. So you keep that no scoring streak alive, keep that going at least. But you can look at that and be like, dang, who's gonna be throwing to me? But there's a lot of things too. A lot of things. I mean, look at Mario Cristobal. He's over here on Hakeem Williams' line, calling him nonstop the last 48 hours. He's calling him as early as like 5 a.m., wondering what the heck's going on. Hey, Hakeem, let's try to flip you. We got all the NIL. But at some point, guys are loyal. And it's rare to see nowadays Hakeem Williams is a different kind of breed. We've learned that. But loyalty was huge for Hakeem. And he told everybody that after the ceremony that, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And you just don't see that as much anymore. But Florida State was able to kick away Miami there. And Hakeem, too, I don't think he was a guy that wanted to stay in that area. He wanted to get out, and it just ended up being that Florida State would be the right spot. And you could have gone, Jimbo Fisher trying to make a run there, too. But you're going all the way over to College Station, and you honestly just saw what kind of season they had with all the talent that they had. All the talent that they have on that field. It's absolutely ridiculous how much talent they have and how, I can't say a bad word on here, but how god-awful they played this year. It just kind of shows, it's gonna go in waves. Guys are going to be attracted to the NIL situations, and then some guys are going to be attracted to what's actually going on the field. And I think, Mike Norvell and them, they're realizing, this year they had to make improvements. They had to do this because if you're going to hold on to that 2024 class, looks really nice right now on paper. If you're able to keep them, that's a pivotal moving point. If Florida State is able to go make a run here at another 10-win season in 2023, move forward competing for the ACC championship, that puts you on, I think that puts you on a 3 or 4 year run where Florida State has got some really nice talent on their roster able to work with. So these next 2 years are gigantic with what Florida State wants to do to finish off the 2024 to 2029, in my opinion. And it's going to come down to how they perform this next season, in my opinion. But right now, Florida and Miami, they're just a lot of it relying on NIL. And you've got Billy Napier, who at some point had a really nice class and now can't close. And it's been the way for Florida State too in some regards. But
I think the other thing too is a lot of this will change eventually because you're going to have APR. APR's got to come back. And once APR comes back, you can't just have guys leaving and not be accountable for their degrees. But until that happens, you basically can flip your roster every year if you want to. But Miami's probably, I think when it's all said and done, will have 40 to 45 different players between seniors and attrition. And Florida probably similar to that. You can't lose half your roster, even if you're trying to go into a situation where you're trying to build it back. Florida State is in a situation that's a little bit closer to like an NFL team that's trying to make a splash of free agency because they're close. The window is now. And when you look at where the ACC is, you look at their schedule next year, you look at how the offense performed with a harder schedule, you look at who's coming back. If you're able to capture that lightning in a bottle, you're going to be in a situation where now you can kind of afford it, but it's still unacceptable because eventually you're going to have the guys who you can build in, and development is development. I have this argument with people. If they're not going after, they have a couple one and dones, but most of these guys have 2 and 3 years left to play. So if you're a freshman, you come in and you don't really contribute much. Your year one is a wash anyway. you're really giving 2 to 3 years. If you're an NFL prospect, you're only in college for 3 years for the most part, or performing for 3 years. So you're giving 2 to 3 years of quality development. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what he's bringing in, a bunch of guys who have multiple years who can give you something. So I think that is what makes this a little bit different. And I really think with this class and a lot of kids that they're bringing in, NIL isn't as big as what people think. They want to go to the NFL, and they just want to make sure that they're not losing opportunities to participate in the NIL as much as, they care about how much money they get. So I think that was what Hakeem's thing. And I think that made him a special prospect in my eyes as well.
You got the state breakdown with 10 in Florida, and then the other 6 are just spread out all over the place, no more than 1 in any other state. So that seems to be stronger for Norvell than it's been with these other classes that he stayed in state.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that comes down to him having more guys with ties that are more comfortable recruiting the state of Florida. But I think now with proof of concept, they've got to go in, recruit heavier, and recruit a little bit more braggadocious. Let them know every time you go to Miami. I would recruit every tweet. I mean, I would send a tweet to every recruit that's between us and Miami, something at 2:15 every day. And anybody who doesn't know what that means, 2:15 is 45 minutes to 3. So I'm making sure everybody knows at every given point that we beat Miami 45-3 with this lion ass Cuban that they got. Matter of fact, Mike, you should say that about Mario and Ruiz. I give you permission to call them that. I would say we beat G5 Billy up, and it's gonna get worse. And when you get a chance, I think if Mike can could channel that. I know Florida State fans don't want to hear this, but he needs to channel the spirit of Heartless Jimbo. Heartless Jimbo in 2013 was somebody to watch and behold. That's when they beat was it Boston College that was ranked and they had the hangman noose? No, Maryland. It was Maryland. Like, you need to go beat teams like that. Everybody should be like, if we get up on LSU, bump a pitch. Go 5 tight ends if we got to. Like, just
we got them now.
Beat the brakes off of people unmercifully. And then what you start doing is you start telling them, hey, I know you're looking at a couple different places. We got this thing rolling. You could either come be a part of this, or I'm going to tell you, for every recruit they flip of ours, or every battle that Miami beats us, I'm going to add. Matter of fact, that's what I'm going to start saying. Every battle that Miami beats us in, Mike's going to add a touchdown. So if you beat us head-to-head in 5, we're going to beat you by that many touchdowns. That's the minimum. And I think that's kind of the braggadocious that they need to kind of bring to the trail.
Well, they got the stats now to back them up. They haven't been able to do that. And now if you add on the stats, and Mike Norvell talked about it during the press conference, said top 10 on offense and defense. Not a lot of colleges right now can say that. Not a lot. And they're going to use that, and they can brag a lot now. And I think Mike Norvell has that kind of energy. That's what you like about him as a coach, definitely when it comes down to rivalries in Florida and Miami. And now it's Clemson too. Those games are extremely, extremely serious to him. And, he came away with two of those wins, at least the rivals. And then, you came away with a close loss there to Clemson. I think too, if Florida State's fully healthy in that game, I think it's a different result. And if DJ doesn't have the best game of his career against FSU, that doesn't happen. But, it just ends up being some bad luck sometimes for FSU. But, now they got the stats to be able to back this up, and you're bringing back your star quarterback next season. It should improve even more. And you can run 3 tight end sets now, James, with what kind of product they're going to be having with Coach Thomas. And you got Jaheim Bell, and then you landed Kyle Morlock in the transfer portal, 2 guys that will make an immediate impact for Florida State next season. And Mike Norvell calling Jaheim Bell one of the most explosive players in college football. You add that alongside Trey Benson and Jordan Travis, who have shown us that, you can also claim them as being one of the most explosive players in college football. That offense, and we'll talk about it a ton once we get out of this bowl game, of how ridiculous this offense could be going into the next season. The big question mark right now might be defense, but you're still waiting on Fabian Lovett and what Jared Verse end up doing here. It's at least we're at this point now where it's fun to talk about. It really is exciting to talk about. And next week, then we'll preview Florida State versus Oklahoma and Orlando, which should be able to run about 350 yards on them, maybe by the third quarter.
Yeah, they are not stout up front and do not have a good run defense in particular, or any level of defense. I'm curious about this Kyle Morlock, because we had Jared Verse last year, obviously playing in obscurity at Albany, but there were things that led to him kind of going under the radar and landing at a place like that. Jaheim Bell was obvious as soon as I saw that land, and Logan, you would let us know that was about to happen. I'd seen him at South Carolina. I know that he's a freak. He's playing in the NFL, and he produced in the SEC. But Kyle Morlock, have you guys seen the tape on him? How do we know that he's that good? And obviously they're going after a player at Shorter University.
I was going to say, just trust evaluation. Trust what Markrogers has done so far on the offensive side. Look at Trey Benson. We all were not too fond, maybe initially, of like, okay, looking at the injury, not too pretty there. Not a lot of experience on the college level either. He comes and he works out, things work out smoothly, and then boom, he's now your starting running back going into 2023, leading rushing yards. I think that the valuation is probably the biggest thing, and we got to start giving credit to the staff on doing that with a lot of these players. And you saw it with Johnny Wilson, a guy that really not a lot of respect was put on the name, and not that there should have been for him at Arizona State. And there's still a lot of things that Johnny Wilson can get better at, but he ended up being a big-time player for Florida State offensively. I think it's all about evaluation. With Jared Verse, you kind of knew that he was in like kindergarten as like a 9th grader, 10th grader. Like, it was just not fair with the competition he was going against, and you saw him play against Syracuse and bring that same type of play. But Florida State, offensively and in the tight end room, they need this kind of guy at 6'7", extremely athletic. Not primarily, he can block, but you can still use him for a variety of different things. And you could run some trips. You could have Johnny Wilson out to the side with him. You could put Kyle out wide left. You could have Jaheim Bell and the H-back. There's just a different kind of variety of things that Florida State's now going to be able to do in that tight end room that they haven't been able to do in years past. And you're losing Cam McDonald off, and you've seen some signs from Marquise and Douglas. This whole tight end room's revamped. But yeah, I think just trusting evaluation, James, in my opinion, has been something that Florida State has been able to kick on the last 2-3 years, going back to maybe even Deshaun Corbin with what they were able to do with him.
Yeah, and also look, it's not like Florida State was the only one begging for his services. Everybody wanted him at one point. 6'7", 250 pounds. You don't have to be a devastating blocker. You got to be a willing one. That's why you have Biscuit over there, who's the better of your blockers. Jaheim Bell isn't the greatest blocker either. He's more of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy. But what he's able to do is give you another big target that, whether he's able to excel this, whether it was D2 level or not, he was able to give you almost 1,000 yards receiving in his 2 years at Shorter in that position in the box, basically playing power forward. And that's something that we haven't had consistently. I think about the LSU game. I think about Clemson. I think about some of the games where we try to dump it off to our tight end and it's just out of reach or it's a drop. Well, we need some sure hands that are there. And I think that just gives you another option. And even if we go 2 tight end sets or even with one, when you have a 6'7", 250 guy, you got Johnny Wilson, you got your other wide receiver weapons. You have to adapt for that. You have to be able to create matchups for that as a defensive coordinator. And the more you get guys substituting, the more you allow the opportunity for mismatches to come up. And I think that's really what Murlock does, is give Florida State an opportunity to have mismatches.
Mm-hmm. One thing, too, Florida State, one of their most inconsistent things was red zone this year. Jaheim Bell, Kyle Morlock, that's going to improve it there. And look at what Mike Norvell is able to do, navigating against some of these defenses. They got to do better consistency-wise in that red zone and scoring, and leaving away with 6 points. So, Kyle and Jaheim should be able to help with that quite a bit.
Great stuff, guys. Another Florida State Seminoles Live in the books, number 191. Get back here, everybody, next Wednesday at 6 Eastern. Bring a friend, bring 2, bring 50. Why don't we do that? And make it to Logan's show tonight right here on YouTube, Noel Game Day, 8 o'clock Eastern. Again, get here with Logan and the guys breaking down more Florida State football. James, what do you got for us?
Just a cool ass tailgate that we're doing down here, the Cheez-It Bowl. Still have tickets available for that. And outside of that, man, I'm so ready for. I'm in the holiday spirit, but I'm ready for Christmas to be over. So
same.
I'm all gived out, Mark. Appreciate you and everybody who donated to the toy drive, man. We were able to give 100 kids some gifts in Tallahassee, and then I got one more thing. I'm working with Academy Sports, taking 10 kids on 100. 10 kids get $100 to spend at Academy Sports in Tallahassee. So after that, y'all don't ask me for nothing until my book bag drops. I'm tired of y'all.
You need a break. This man a
There you
break.
All right, gentlemen. You guys are the best. Appreciate you doing this. Otherwise, we don't have a Florida State show without you too. So appreciate you coming, being here and delivering.
Yeah, Mark. Appreciate you, James. See you soon.
Happy holidays, everybody.